because that's the mimer that we're constantly based on. The two kavim that we spoke about in the mimer from this week's Dvar Malchus about B'chodesh HaShlishi. And last week we spoke about V'amayim Lahem Choyma Miminam Mismoilam. All of this is really based on what we learned, on what the Rebbe is basing it on, the mimer that he spoke about in that year, Tavshin Lamed Gimel. He said a mimer, Basi Legani, speaking about the kriris and the chmimis and nefesh bahamis, the coldness to worldly, to kedusha things, and the heat and passion for worldly things, and the coldness to kedusha dika things. And these are two kavim, and from those two kavim he goes into what we learned last week's mimer and this week's mimer. So I felt it would be appropriate to go back to where it all started. Okay, B'siyata Shmai Motzah Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Boy Yud Shvat Maimer Beis Tavshin Lamed Gimel Basi Legani Achoisi Kalom. So again, it's going to go through the beginning of Basi Legani. It's a Basi Legani Maimer. It's going to go through the first two oisius of the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer. We'll do it quickly, hopefully, and then we'll get into the topic of our Maimer. Maybe Balalulu Maimer Shnasal Yom Estaltos Shloim. The one whose yard said it says in the Maimer that he gave for his day of his Estaltos. Mashakosva Medrash, what it says in the Medrash Legani Leganuni. We learn out that it says Legani, to my garden. That means to my special place. Malkim Shayikri Betchila, to my place where I was there primarily at the beginning. The Ikr Shchina B'Tachtoyim Ma'isa, the main Shchina was down here below. The Koyal Olam Hazeh Agash M'Vatach M'Shein Tach Lamata Men. It's referring to this low and physical world, that there's nothing lower and beneath it. Boy, I see Shchina, that in it was the primary Shchina, and also the primary place of the Shchina. That's why it's called my garden, instead of just Legan. Hashem is saying, I've come to a garden, or to the garden, but my garden, this is Hashem's special place. This was as a result of the creation. In other words, right away at the beginning of creation, Hashem was already here. That was the way how it was. That was the initial state. But afterwards, because of Hashem's will, that man should accomplish, that man should do his avodah. There was the idea of the awesome plot and scheme against mankind. Therefore, there were the seven sins throughout the seven generations. At the beginning, from the sin of Deit Zadas, that caused the Shekhinah to ascend from the earth to the first Rakia, to the first heaven. Similar to this in the 6 generations following this. Afterwards began the Avodah. That Avram was one, the expression used in the pasuk, he brought down the Shekhinah from the 7th Rakia to the 6th. Until Moshe, that he was the 7th, came along. And all the 7th are favored. Not only did he bring the Shekhinah down from the upper Rakia to the lower one, who the main thing is, he brought down the Shekhinah from the heaven to the earth, to the place that I was there primarily. In other words, the main thing is, what we care about is what happened down here, and all the 7 levels in between, or the 6 levels in between, is not as important for the general picture and the general purpose as what happens down here in this world. The main place of the Shekhinah was down here below. But was added to this, in addition to what was there before the Chet Zadas. Now we have something greater because it's affected through the avodah of a person. Top of the next page, therefore, after Moshe Rabbeinu brought the Shekhinah down the land, there was a general command, they shall make for me a Migdash. And we know that Migdash, the word sanctuary, does not just mean the base on Migdash that was in Yerushalayim, but the Koy ala Mishkan. It's referring to the Mishkan, the traveling Migdash that was with them in the Midbar. Through the Mishkan also was accomplished that I will dwell amongst them. Not only was the Eibishter in the Mishkan and the Migdash, but he's within each and every one. Similar to this is in the spiritual avodah of every single one. Concerning this, it says that tzaddikim will inherit the earth and they will dwell forever upon it. So instead of saying what will happen to tzaddikim, he is saying about what the tzaddikim actually do. That's the meaning of Yishmin Ladallah. Tzaddikim is referring to tzaddikim. And tzaddikim does not just mean certain specific individuals, but amich kulum tzaddikim, your entire nation are tzaddikim. Yirshu Aretz, they inherit the earth. Shu Gan Eden. Why do they inherit the Gan Eden? Because they make dwell and they draw down the level of the everlasting one. That's what it means v'yishkenu la'ad. They make the ad, the everlasting one, rest over here. The way Hashem is everlasting, what level of Hashem is the level that's called everlasting? It's the true and essential level of Soviv, the highest, most transcendent level. Aleha, they bring it down. V'yishkenu la'ad, they make the la'ad, the everlasting one, rest upon it, ba'aretz, in the earth. So in other words, because tzaddikim bring the Shekhinah down on the earth, that's why they have Gan Eden, like the Zohar says, when the Sitra Achra becomes sublimated, so the glory of the Eibishter ascends in all the worlds. That level of the Hashem's ascent in all the worlds is the level that encompasses all the worlds. Because on all worlds equally, that's why it's hinted in the words B'chulu. Now we're going to get to the third chapter of Basar Legani, where the Rebbe is going to start elaborating eventually on this two lines issue. Line 13, base. And the Friedrich Rebbe goes on to explain in the third ois of the Basar Legani Maimer. In continuation to what was said previously concerning the Mishkan, from this is understood as a general matter in the entire chain order of descent. From this will be understood why the Mishkan was specifically from Shittim wood. That was a primary aspect of the Mishkan. Like it says, you will make the beams and the boards for the Mishkan Shittim wood. So in other words, the Shittim is a very crucial and vital part of the Mishkan. The Hegdem, why do I make such a big deal? It's called Shittim wood, and if it would be called by a different name, so we say the Behegdem Hayedua being in Shmoy Shikul Lashon HaKodesh by prefacing what it's known concerning the name that something is called in Lashon Kodesh, like it's explained in the writings of the Arizal. And afterwards in the teachings of Baal Shem Tov and Mizrach Magid, until the Alter Rebbe and Shaykh V'Munah, where he talks about the name of all the items as they are hinted in the Asar Amaras and derived from the 10 utterances, and also further spoken about in the Rabbeim following it. The coming into being in the existence and the life force and vitality of all matters, top of page Chav Zayin. It's through his name that they will call him. Like we learned also in the last Maimer, that the name is the means, not the last Maimer, but the Maimer in Tavshim Mem Daled, last week's. That the name that they called him, Shemevate es Toichnoi, the name also expresses the content of the matter that's called by the name. And that is why it's also the life force and vitality of the item that's called by that name. So too, it's concerning the Shittim word, Shashem Shittim Avates Toichana Inyan, that the name Shittim expresses the content of what these Karashim or these boards, these beams of the Mishkan. Mevur ba Maimer, and the Maimer, the Friedrich Rebbe explains, Shita Pirushinatiya, Shita means leaning off, turning away. That's also the idea of folly and foolishness. The turning away from knowledge and wisdom. And the Friedrich Rebbe continues to explain that there is the foolishness of the opposite. In other words, the foolishness of Klippa. Chazal state, a person does not transgress an Aveda unless a spirit of Shtus enters him. The idea behind this is, the Nizbar was explained previously, that first there had to be the idea of a sin, so that there should be able to be the general idea of the service of man, so that we should be able to affect the sublimation of the Sitra Achra, and through that there will be the everlasting aspect of Hashem come down here, which wasn't possible before the Chet Eitzadas, even though the Shekhinah was here beforehand, but we didn't tap into this true level of Soiviv that's higher than it, because there was no Iskafi of Sitra Achra. But now, once the Adam Rishon did what he did, and all the other Averis that took place, now there's a much higher level that we can attain. So the Rebbe asks in line 10, or explains in line 10, we need to understand, how could there be a sin by a Jewish person? Okay, do it, like it's known the teaching of the Alter Rebbe. A Jew, neither does he want, nor can he be torn away from godliness, when he wishes to fulfill the will of the Eibishter. And for this reason, he brings what our Chazal teach. A person does not transgress an Aveda unless the spirit of Shtus enters him. That the spirit of Shtus covers over and hides and conceals the fact that that every Yid inherently does not want to and cannot be separated from godliness, so the spirit of foolishness covers that over. It's explained the Maimer, the state that occurs as a result of the fact that the Ruach Shtus enters him. And here we get to the topic that we've been discussing over those two Mamor. There's two aspects of what happens with the Ruach Shtus. The heat, the passion in physical matters, that's a result of the spirit of Shtus. And the coldness, being ambivalent, indifferent to spiritual matters. Bedugmas behemoth is similar to an animal. Shekol chayusa eina ela binyanim gashmi. Its entire passion, life, vitality, and energy is in physical matters. Eina shayach is l'davar ruchnim, and it's not at all shayach, nothing. Spirituality doesn't talk to an animal. She'ein zein yana klal. It's not at all what the Nefesh Bahamis is about. It's not what an animal is about, a physical animal. Neither is the Nefesh Bahamis about that. Like it's explained in detail in Ois Gimel of the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimon. So here's where the Rebbe elaborates. Ois Gimel, line 24. Since it's a general matter in the Nefesh Bahamis, moving, so it's understood so that this idea should be able to come down in the Nefesh Bahamis. There has to be a root and a beginning for this in matters of godliness. If we have something even in Klippa, if we have something in Nefesh Bahamis, there must be some source in above. From that source in above, in godliness, page Chavches. From this could be the possibility, the allowance, the leaving room for the entrance of the spirit of Shtus in the two movements and approaches that on their own they are opposite types of, if you will, emotions or approaches in the world. The chamimis begashmis v'kriris beruchnis. heat, passion in the physical, and ambivalence and coldness in the spiritual. In other words, what the Rebbe perhaps is like pointing out over here is that really either a person is passionate or he's dispassionate. Either he's a cold personality, either he's indifferent, or a person is very excitable and so on. For the person to have both of them, to incorporate this pick and choose type of personality, he's passionate about the physical and he's cold about the spiritual. So really, this is two opposites at its core, but still in all, the fact that there could be such a ruach shtus in these two seemingly opposite ways, it's because even in Elikus, even in Ruchnius, in godliness, we have the two opposite things. That's why it's possible for a person in a Klippa environment to have two opposites in his what he's falling through. Line 3, page Chavches. The idea behind this is concerning the general chain order of descent. Concerning this, it says in Torah, the Torah is they are blueprints that through which the Torah is a blueprint through which the world was created. It's brought down at the beginning of Medrash Rabbah, in the beginning of Bereshis. So that's why in the beginning of Torah there's already speaks about Seder Ishtalshlus. Where do we see in the beginning of Torah speaks about Seder Ishtalshlus? Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'es ha'aretz. That pasuk already speaks about Seder Ishtalshlus. Like it's brought down the Zohar, in this first pasuk in the Torah is included already all the 10 spheres. Bereshis bara Elokim koi al gimel rishonos. The words Bereshis bara Elokim, those 3 words is referring to the 3 first spheres of Chachma Bina Das. He doesn't go into explaining why all 3. Bereshis, this is something that's already well known. Reishis Chachma, that Chachma is associated with Reishis, it's the first of the spheres. So Bereshis has to do with Chachma. Elokim a lot of times has to do with Bina. Elu Velu Divra Elokim Chaim has to do with Bina. And maybe the fact that the Bereshis and Bereshis and Elokim come together, that's the idea of Das. I'm not sure exactly. But Al Kaponim, Bereshis Bara Elokim hints at the first 3 spheres of Chachma Bina Das. Beis HaShamayim, Beis HaAretz, and the heavens and the earth, Koyal Shivas Yimei HaBinyan. It's referring to the 7 days of building, which means the 7 spheres, the 7 midas, which Hashem built the world every day a different midah. Chesed was the first day, Gvura was the second day, and so on, which is in general divided into Zeir Anpin and Malchus. The Shisha midas, which are called Zeir Anpin and Malchus. Shamayim is hinting at Zeir Anpin because Shamayim, as Rashi says, is Eish Umayim, fire and water, that's Gvura and Chesed. And as we know in Perek Beis and Tanya, that Gvura and Chesed is what's koilol all the rest of the midas. They are the general 2 midas. So therefore Shamayim includes all the other midas of Tiferes, Netzach, Hoid, and Yesod. And Aretz is Malchus. Malchus being the lowest and last sphere, it's called Aretz, just like Aretz on the bottom. And so first in Beis Boros Kimas Shemaim with Aretz, we speak about the Seder Ishtalshlus as it's incorporated or as it's expressed in the 10 spheres. The Adl Shemaim v'Aretz called Svam Kipshutai, until the heavens and the earth and all of it, their hosts in the literal sense. This low world, that there's nothing lower than it, not just the 10 spheres the way they are in Atzilus, but all the worlds the way it actually comes down to we actually have this physical world. So hine haschala b'zehi, the beginning of the process. How does the whole Seder Ishtalshlus begin? So he says, here he's going to elaborate some more on that what we brought from the Baal Shem Tov, and from the Magid, and from the Zoyar in the previous two Amarim that we learned about this topic. Mefarish Baal Shem Tov, because Hashem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov explains, Vayomer Hashem Yisborach, that Hashem Yisborach said, Mikoyach Midas Elokim, that's what it means Vayomer Elokim. Hashem said, by the power of the attribute of Elokim, Shu Midas Hagvura Metzam Tzmoir, that is the mid of Hashem's severity that constricts the light. That because of this, because there's the Midas Elokim that constricts the light, now now there'll be a light that could remain and not just leave and ascend. Like the world should be able to handle it. So that's why it says, Vayomer Elokim Yihi Oir, that Elokim, the Midas HaTzimtzum, the Midas HaGvura, Hashem said and used the Midas HaGvura, so there should be able to be an Oir, there should be able to be a light that can come into the world. Mamshech B'Kosav, the pasuk continues, Vayihi Oir. After it says Yihi Oir, it says Vayihi Oir, and it was light. The Zohar asked the question, the Sefer HaBoyer, another Kabbalah Sefer asked this question, and it's also brought down the Mefarshim. Why doesn't it say, and it was so, like it says by other things in the other utterances in the Eibishter, when it says, Vayomer Elokim Yihi Rakia, and Hashem said there should be a firmament, it says, Vayihi Chen, and it was like that. It doesn't say, Vayihi Rakia. Why all of a sudden by Oir, after it says Vayomer Elokim Yihi Oir, does it say Vayihi Oir, and it was Oir? But Oir HaTorah, La Rav Magid, the Oir HaTorah, the Mizrach Magid, it's explained. The Isa B'Rayim Mehem, that's brought down in the part of the Zohar called Rayim Mehem. Yihi Oir Da Chesed, where it says, let there be light, that's the level of Chesed. Vayihi Oir, and there was light, Da Gevura. So it's the same idea like we spoke about before. There was the initial light, and then there had to be the tzimtzum of the light, the Gevura on the light, so it should be able to be niskabel, the world should be able to handle it. Moise B'Torah Sarav Magid Le'elmanei, the Mizrach Magid's Torah previous to this, adds a similar, an idea that also expresses this idea of Vayihi Oir, that's Gevura. Kol Makim Shizel Mashak Gam Mashak Kosev Vayihi Oir. This is also why it says Vayihi Oir. K'mayim Rabbi Seinu Zal, the statement of our Chazal. Kol Makim Shenemar Vayihi Ein El Lashon Tzar. When it says the word Vayihi, it means an expression of suffering. Don't remember right now how they derive it. I think Vai. The Vayihi, Vai is a lashon oivei, like it's an expression of pain. Vayihi b'mei Achashverosh, the Chazal explained this, and in other places the Chazal explained this. So how does that fit in over here? That's why it says Vayihi Oir. That's a loymar he meant to say. Mikoyach, top of page Chavtes, had Tzimtzum. This is something that's coming out of the power of the Tzimtzum, of the constriction. It's seen as if it's a pain and a suffering for the world. This means after the constriction of Elokim saying there should be light, there was an additional tzimtzum. That there became another level of light, that's Gvura, and because of that additional tzimtzum, that additional constriction, so what we have is from the perspective of the world, it looks like something that's a pain and suffering. Obviously, Hashem is doing it so we should be able to take it in, like he said before. But along with that, we are saying that it's something that seems to be painful. That's why it says Vayihi. So it's interesting. he piles one tzimtzum on top of another tzimtzum. There's Vayomer, that's Hashem's midah of kindness. But then afterwards, there's the level of Elikim, the midas HaGevura, which made the initial V'yi'or. That's one level of light. And then Vayi'or, that's an even worse level. That's even more difficult pain and suffering. And that's the level of Gevura. Not like the level of Chesed that the Zohar said that the first Yehi'or, even though it came as a result of Elikim, still the first Yehi'or is a level of Chesed. Still in all, the second one's a level of Gevura. Line 5. And from this matter, the way it's in godliness, that in godliness we have right away at the beginning of Seder Ishtalshlus. We have Chesed and Gevura, Yehi'or and Vayi'or, etc. Nimshach is Beizat Shnuas, and now comes about both types of approaches that we said before, that there can be at the same time, there can be heat and passion, even though it's in Klippa, and coldness that Klippa expresses towards Kedusha. This means because of, or this matter that Hashem Yisbarach said out of the power of Midas Olakim, that's the midah of severity that constricts the light. What is the idea of the Gevura? It's separating, it's ascending, it's concealment of the powerful expansion of revelation of godliness. So when godliness is concealed, taking that and running with that and going further, how much godliness becomes concealed, so then you have an even worse level. After much chain order of descent and divisions to no end of it coming down lower and lower, in such a way where there's tzimtzum after tzimtzum, that's how it's derived. That's how it evolves eventually into coldness in spiritual matters. And because of the idea that it says there shall be light, which is going on Gevura, on severity, in addition to what's taking place over here, there should be a certain type of light that the world should be able to handle it. So now this becomes so bound up. This light that is now emanating from Hashem is not just becoming tolerable by the world, but it's also becoming connected with the physicality of the world. To such a degree, it's becoming connected with the physical world. That the entire idea of light stops being visible, and rather, what are we seeing? Ki'im inyan agashmi is, and the only thing that becomes visible and apparent from this light is only the physicality of the world. Because of this, because of this great connection that it has with physicality. So what's given the important place? Physicality is given the important place. From this can result an untoward thing, an unwanted thing, an inappropriate love. That's the idea of coldness in physical matters. In other words, because what am I being presented with? I'm being completely removed from the spirituality. All that I'm being presented with is the physical. Since all I'm being presented with is the physical, so therefore my love and my desires and my passion and my heat is only in the physical. So it's both things. The spiritual become minimized, so therefore that means that it's cold now in the spiritual, and the seeing of the physical makes that our love is now on the physical and in the physical realm.